So yesterday, Bernie Sanders released his Housing for All plan, right? And the vision with this is to end homelessness. And it got an amazing reception on social media. Like it was trending. The hashtag Housing for All was trending on Twitter for a good like 7 hours. Like I was watching again. And then I was watching this clip that Ryan Nobles from CNN did about Bernie, which I was honestly shocked to see that CNN had put this on. But it talked about how Bernie has been doing more of these smaller, intimate town halls where he's doing more of the listening and less talking and listening to people share their stories. Like the most prominent story, which a lot of you have heard, was the one about John the veteran at the Carson City, Nevada rally, where John has stage 4 Huntington's disease, and he got this $139,000 medical bill he was not expecting, and the only option that he could see to deal with this was suicide because he can't pay for it. And Bernie immediately like shut that down and was like, no, you're not doing that. And afterwards, like he and Jane talked to John and like got a lot of things going for him. And there's even a GoFundMe to help him with the bills, with that bill. Following that was another gentleman named Bill, who turned out to be a Trump supporter. And he recently lost his job. He was with Pep Boys, so they decided to just shut down and leave everybody high and dry. And so Bill was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay bills, and I don't have health care. And like it started off tense. But by the end, Bernie like had called him up, put his arm around him, and basically didn't treat him like the bad Trump supporter. He treated Bill like another human being who's in pain and suffering, and wants help, wants someone to listen and be there. And you could tell like his whole demeanor changed by the end. Bernie had him like, look, I will be your champion. You can trust me and you can believe me. And Bernie has decades of receipts. Again, go back on YouTube, right? You can see decades of Bernie walking his talk and doing what he says he's going to do. So, and in this clip too, again, you see these people like sharing their pain and suffering with Bernie. And what's amazing about Bernie is that he can be emotionally present with these people and their pain. And that's a remarkable skill, like people skill to have. I mean, think about this in your own life. Like how many people in your personal life can be present when you are like in immense pain and suffering? Like when you are just like that intense, like how many people do you know that can be present with you and work, work that through with you? Like not very many. And if you have people like that, like be very grateful for them. And so imagine Bernie has that ability and we can have that in a president. Like how amazing would that be? And we're going to need that because following Trump, the country, we're going to need a lot of there's going to be a lot of healing. There's going to be a lot of people like angry and frustrated and yelling and mad. I mean, that's kind of why Bernie yells a lot, because he's reflecting what's happening with most of America emotionally, right? And again, this goes back to the fact that Bernie has very high emotional intelligence. He has high EQ, right? He has the ability to emotionally connect with people and to listen to them and be there in the presence of their suffering. So that got me thinking about how do we now? So this race is now basically a 3-person race between Bernie, Biden, and Warren, and the establishment is cranking it up again, pushing Warren. And I mentioned now is the time where we have to differentiate the two, and so it got me thinking, listening to these stories and reading about Bernie and his Housing for All, because his vision is to end homelessness. And here's the point about Bernie that isn't brought up a lot, and I think it should be brought up more. So I'm gonna point it out. Bernie Sanders would be a humanitarian president. Think about that. Bernie Sanders, the humanitarian president. It fits him perfectly, right? If you just look at basically like how his worldview, his history, he has spent decades fighting for the poor, the sick, and the marginalized. And if you look at his 21st century economic bill of rights, it is written through the lens of someone who's a humanitarian, right? So this Bill of Rights has basically 6 pillars that deal with healthcare, education, affordable housing, a job with a livable wage, a secure retirement, and a clean environment and livable planet, right? So all of this is to create a basis level security so all Americans can live. And it deals head on with a lot of the issues that create pain and suffering in our society, right? Homelessness, joblessness, economic loss, racial injustice, environmental injustice, social injustice, like all of these things that contribute to the pain and suffering of millions of Americans. Bernie's 21st century economic bill of rights like encompasses all of that and brings enormous relief and comfort to all Americans. And so I was just like, hey, you know what? We should talk about that more. Bernie Sanders will be the humanitarian president. Like, imagine that in the White House. Like, we can have somebody, again, at that level, the head of our country, who will look at things through a humanitarian lens. That he focuses on the pain and suffering of people first. I mean, here's just a quick example. Remember in 2016 during his rallies, there were multiple times where someone would faint or fall down, and Bernie would immediately stop the entire rally. Didn't matter if there were thousands of people there. He would stop the rally. Sometimes, a couple times, he actually ran towards the person if they were close enough. But he would stop and say, get that person help. Like, make sure that they're okay. And then as soon as he knew they were okay, then he would continue the rally. But how often do you see that? Like, where you have like a stadium full of people, and here's this, the main speaker is stopping to make sure that one person is okay. And that's the kind of human being that Bernie is. He deeply cares about human beings. He is very attuned to people's pain and suffering. He does not want people to be in pain and suffering. He wants them to thrive and have prosperous lives. And he wants the planet to live. He wants Mother Earth to live, right? He wants all of us, because if Mother Earth is not fine, all of us, all life on the planet is gone if Mother Earth is not able to sustain us anymore. And that's another thing, right? So along the humanitarian lines, President Sanders will stop all the endless wars that we have in these other countries, these interventionist regime change wars. He will stop that. He will stand up to the military-industrial complex and tell them no more. And then he will also stop the endless war that we humans have been having with Mother Earth, exploiting and abusing her to extract resources for profits. So his Green New Deal plan is very ambitious, and basically it from a humanitarian lens, it ends the war with Mother Earth, so that we are working with Mother Nature, not against her, and that we understand we are part of nature. And Bernie talks about that often too, right? That we are part of nature, and we have to stop acting like we're separate from nature. Which again ties into a lot of things of how we even just treat other human beings, right? Just seeing each other as fellow human beings that all want the same thing. We all want love. We want empathy, compassion. We want to feel like we matter, that we make a difference. And, that's the thing that stands out, that really stands out when you think about like the kind of presidency that Bernie Sanders is going to have. We have not seen that in our lifetimes. Most of us, like who are alive right now, have never we've never seen a humanitarian president, and not at this level. Not what Bernie Sanders, is proposing. And I mean, it really, like, I mean, just thinking about it makes me really happy. Thinking about this new earth, that is waiting to be ushered in, and the collapse of the old capitalistic system, which really, like I've said this time and time again, the modern capitalism is a system of exploitation that keeps the 99% in economic servitude to the 1% at the expense of people, animal, and planet, so they can perpetually get rich. And it has to end. It has to stop. Mainly, the climate crisis is the clarion call. Like, this system no longer works. It can't go on. So humans, you either change, or that's it. That's it, because we can't go on like this anymore. And so, here we have Bernie Sanders coming in with his 21st century economic Bill of Rights, looking at the world through a humanitarian lens, with this desire to uplift everybody and transform the country so it works for everybody, not just the few, for the higher good of all.